10th of July, 1916. Dear Mother, well, it was like a hot Aussie day here today as we journeyed further. One could easily get lost in these trenches, as they're almost like their own cities. There's mud everywhere, and when the sun comes up, the trench's walls are almost white. In front of our first trench, there are rows of barbed wire that you have to cut through. Then there's no man's land, and then Fritz himself. He has wire too, so we send our artillery shells over to try and blow it away before we hop over to attack. Though, one cookie could do the trick. The food on the whole's pretty good, but I swear the cookies could break a chap's jaw. Some jokers reckon the men are carving photo frames out of them for their sweethearts' pictures. I have something else that I'm carving for you, Mum, but I won't tell you about it just yet. Keep it as a surprise. Your loving son always, Albert XXX.
July 14, 1916. Australian General Hospital. Jack, I'm here. Yes, finally here on the Western Front. Here to find you and bring you home before Christmas. Promise. I'm hoping this diary will help me keep track of the days and of my search for you. Upon arrival last week, I began to search amongst the sea of faces, but as yet no sign. I know you will appear, but I keep my quest secret from the other volunteer nurses. There are quite a few of us here from the VAD, undertaking the duties we were trained for in London, the dressing and supporting of wounds, the awful draining of them. Australian nurses have begun to train us in administering morphine. We're to be moved up the line, you see, to one of the casualty clearing stations. There's another push coming. Trainloads of Australian soldiers have been arriving, with apparently more on the way. Oh, you would like them, Jack, very much. They're so cheerful. They seem to have the very sun inside them shining. They call out to one another and sing, "Pack up your troubles." One of the Australian nurses has a gramophone, and she plays that song constantly. The wounded like it. They seem to get comfort from any tune. The music drowning out the sounds of the distant guns and what horrors echo in their heads. The Red Cross offer very little hope of my finding you, Jack. But I have until September, for only after a year missing will you be pronounced dead. As I said to your father, a mother knows, and I will not accept that our only son is missing. You're just hiding, aren't you? Or lost? But I will find you. I will.
Sandy, I'd just like you to tell us a little bit about the research process to develop a show like this. What goes into making something like this?
It was quite interesting with this because the play that I set out to write and what actually came out were quite different things. Initially, the play came about from a conversation that my brother and his partner had had at a dinner party in London, where everyone at the dinner party who didn't really know one another, but they all realised that all of them had great-grandfathers who had perished on the Somme. So my great-grandfather died on the Somme. And so I started to research the Somme. And I was researching World War One. And because, we're living in Australia, even though I'm an English migrant, I wanted to know about the Australians' involvement in World War One on the Somme. When we talk about Australians in World War One, we tend to focus on Gallipoli. So I actually went to the War Memorial in Canberra and spent a lot of time there. I also went to the Sydney Anzac War Memorial and met a wonderful man there, Brad Manners, and he talked to me about the history of the Australians' engagement on the Western Front and the Somme. And he told me about the Battle of Fresnel. And when I found out about that battle, that sort of spun me off on another spiral, so to speak, of a rabbit hole of research. So it was mainly engaging with the museums and then going to libraries. I read many, many books. I watched many films. I watched many documentaries. And because the centenary was coming up, I was able to also go to the Mitchell Library, and they have letters there. I read lots of letters. So I was able to actually research with objects of the time. The other piece of research that I didn't envisage, but what I realised as I was writing the piece, was that I had to make it of today and make it relevant to today. And so I decided that I would have to talk to soldiers, to people that had experienced being in battle. And it was through meeting two particular gentlemen, Andrew and Malcolm, who had both returned and are veterans, and had returned from different conflicts overseas, mainly Afghanistan and also Timor, that and both of these gentlemen had returned with diagnosis of PTSD, and they were both so brave and generous with their time and with their information and with all of their knowledge and their experience. And I spent a couple of hours with both gentlemen, 2 interviews with both gentlemen, and that really helped a lot in the research.
It's a huge process.
It was a huge process, and from meeting those gentlemen, as well as meeting wonderful men like Brad Copeland and other returned service people, that the play then took on it took on something completely different that I didn't expect. It became a play also about linking PTSD with World War One, in the sense of somebody coming to terms with their own parents' PTSD through studying World War One.
So reading the script, I have to confess that I cried, and I wondered about the emotional challenges that may have come up in performing your script. Can we talk a little bit about that?
It's always hard to bring life to a character, I guess. You know, you always have to find a way to connect to it. But Sandy's writing is so true and so good that this has been one of the easier ones for me. And there's been a lot of discoveries, you know, along the way, and our original director Matt Edgerton has spent such an enormous amount of time with us, you know, helping us really just slowly craft it and slowly dig a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper, that we now have, and now that this is our third remount of the show, we have so many layers of emotion that has gone into it at any given time, because every time we do it again we find a new layer. So it's always a challenge, and
that keeps it fresh too.
But it keeps it fresh,
yeah.
Exactly right. And every layer just adds another. It just creates more depth to it,
yeah.
And it's a joy to perform. And it's there's such a journey for all the characters in the script that it's really enjoyable to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, I guess, and that brings me to my other question about how do you, Felix, spend time preparing to become a teenager again, and not just one that's going through the war, but also just a teenager in general, and the enormous emotional challenges of a teenager in general? How do you prepare for something like that after your 50th performance?
Well, I mean, in general, when I'm coming up to doing the show again, I rely on the stuff that I've done before. So I'll revisit the different physical things that we spoke about in the original development of the script, and I often prefer to work that way and start on the outside and then work back in, and then exactly the same thing. Everything that you need is in the text. So I always will just, as I said, go back and look at the words, and when you suddenly say them in a different way, suddenly it brings a new thought to your mind. And so a lot of my preparation in general sort of comes from that. I'm also lucky, one of my part-time jobs, I work as a coach with lots of teenagers, so I actually have that on the side. I'm always around teenagers, and I often see how they are at their best and at their worst, and so yeah, I'm privileged in that way to kind of have a bit of an insight, a bit of an advantage in that way as well. But yeah, as I said, it's just it is interesting. Always coming back and preparing again. But I really enjoy always what new things are going to be discovered.
Yeah, I like the point about it being in the writing. It is really clever writing in that way. Well done, Sandy. Well, I guess then about the character herself. So about Angela, who is she? Is she someone you know? Can you tell us a little bit about her?
Angela, there's a lot of me in Angela.
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to say that.
No, it's all right. She's the tough side of she's the side of me that she's somebody who for some reason in her life has chosen to build an armor, and that armor is quite aggressive. She's quite an aggressive person, and that's something that I recognize in myself, that I have in me, but she's chosen it for whatever reason, and it's stuck on her. And so I think that one of the things that happens in the play to Angela is that she learns, she starts to soften. She softens with Charlie being there in the house, and with what she learns about Charlie's experience and what her brother-in-law is going through and her sister's going through. And Angela's journey is quite similar to the journey that I had when I wrote the piece, because when I began to write, I had no idea. I had no idea what a soldier goes through. And I don't really have a huge idea even now, but I have a better idea than what I had. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's what happens to Angela, is that she realizes that soldiers and veterans, and it sounds daft to say it, but I think that she was so staunchly anti-war that it would never have occurred to her to even talk to someone who had fought. And she does. She forms a relationship and she learns something. She learns what makes up to some of the things that make up to be a soldier, and they're extraordinary people. And
yeah, there's a huge journey of empathy.
Yeah.
She doesn't. It's not that she accepts it or agrees with it. By the end of it, I think she just understands it.
Yeah, because that's the sort of journey that I went to. I mean, you know, I'm a peacenik, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, I'm all for peace. Of course I am. Everyone is. But I guess, I presume so, hope so. But the people that I met, they gave me a greater and deeper understanding of what it means to be a soldier, and I have full respect for them.
Yeah. Well, I guess that brings me to my last question. Maybe for you, Felix, what do you hope that the audience are taking away from this production?
Exactly what Sandy is just talking about right now is a greater just awareness of all the different perspectives. I think that's something that I just had not really considered, all the different aspects. I wouldn't necessarily say that I was a staunch pacifist, but I'm also definitely not pro-war. I don't think I wasn't coming into this anyway, and I've just been able to have an appreciation for all the different sorts of sides and all the different people that are involved in war, and also the consequences and the effects and stuff that come after it. It's such a complicated, emotional, and fascinating in a way sort of topic, that I think that if we can somehow get people to think in a way that they don't normally think, then I think we've done our job.
Thanks, Felix. Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think that the ripples are enormous of how it affects a family, and the close family, but also the greater family of somebody serving. It's not black and white.
No.
And that's good. So hopefully, I guess I'm hoping that the play raises questions for people. That's good. Whether it answers them or not, none of my business. But I hope it raises questions and causes dialogue. It's good.
Great. Thank you two so much for
Thanks,
this little
Jen.
interview.
Thank you.